I still remember the day I walked into my parents' living room after closing on their house. The same house I once got kicked out of for being a burden. My dad looked up from his recliner, confused, and my mom just stood there, frozen. "You can't be serious," she said, voice shaking. I dropped the keys on the table between us. "Oh, I'm serious. Starting next month, rent's due on the 1st. Let me rewind. Because it wasn't always like this. Once upon a time, I was just the invisible daughter. The backup plan. The one they left off the family group chat. They said I was too sensitive, too dramatic, too useless. College? Waste of money. My dreams? Try something more realistic, Danielle." And I believed them for a long time. Until life cornered me so hard, I either had to rise or disappear. Have you ever been treated like you were never meant to succeed? Drop a broken heart in the comments if someone once told you you weren't enough. I was never the favorite, but I didn't know that until I was old enough to understand silence. When I was little, I didn't see the difference between the way my parents looked at Rachel and the way they looked at me. I just wanted to be loved. I wanted to help in the kitchen like Rachel, wanted to be fast like Luke, and smart like everyone said he was. But I was too slow. Too emotional. Too much work. I remember one Thanksgiving. I must have been 7. I spent all morning drawing this picture of our family. I gave it to Mom while she was basting the turkey, my fingers stained with crayon. She glanced at it for half a second and said, "That's nice, sweetie," then stuck it behind the microwave and never mentioned it again. That picture stayed there for months. Grease-speckled. Forgotten. Rachel, on the other hand, could bake a cake out of a box and Dad would post it on Facebook like she invented pastry. Luke once built a bookshelf in shop class and Mom called it genius. I brought home an A in algebra after weeks of tutoring. No one said a word, but I kept trying. I joined drama club, thinking maybe if I shined on stage, they'd finally see me. After the opening night of Little Women, I waited in the lobby still wearing my Meg March dress. Everyone else had flowers. I had my coat zipped to my chin and my dad on speakerphone saying, "Something came up." Still, I told myself, maybe next time. Maybe if I worked harder. Maybe if I earned it. I got my first job at 15 at a local diner called Daisy's. I'd come home with grease in my hair and a sore back, and Marlene would sigh loudly as I walked in like I was bringing stress into her kitchen. "You're not going to make this a habit, right?" she once said. "Working these types of jobs? That's not a future." But they never offered to help me imagine a different one. Rachel got into NYU, and they threw her party. Banners, cake, family from 2 states away. When I got accepted into a small in-state college for business, on partial scholarship, I told them at dinner. George barely looked up from his plate. Marlene muttered, "Well, we'll see how that works out." I felt like my dreams were something they had to tolerate. Like I was an embarrassment they were too polite to kick out, until one day they weren't. I remember trying to help around the house just to feel useful. Scrubbing baseboards, cooking dinner, babysitting Luke. Every gesture felt like I was auditioning for affection, and still I didn't get the part. I would hear them in the kitchen when they thought I wasn't listening. "Marlene, she's just not like the other two. George, we can't hold her hand forever." I was 17. One night, I asked them if I could apply to an out-of-state internship. It was unpaid, but prestigious, and I had a host family lined up. Rachel had done something similar 2 years prior, and they were thrilled for her. But me? George said, "Danielle, be serious. No one's going to hand you anything. You're not built for that kind of life." And that's when something shifted. I stopped asking for their approval. I started stacking paychecks. Quietly applied for scholarships. Lived at home to save money, but every second felt like sleeping on eggshells. Rachel would breeze in with shopping bags. Luke would joke about me being Mom and Dad's charity case. I laughed along. What else was I supposed to do? In my final semester of college, I moved out. Found a room to rent with a woman named Clara who worked nights and barely spoke. It was cold. There were roaches. But it was mine. I took a corporate job that barely paid above minimum wage, but I worked overtime, taught myself coding, picked up freelance gigs. The first time I hit $10,000 in savings, I cried in the shower. Not because of the money, because I had done it with no one cheering me on. Not a call. Not a card. And still I kept going. While Rachel got divorced and moved back home. While Luke dropped out of college and floated from job to job. While George and Marlene started drowning in debt. They didn't know what I was building. They didn't ask. And I didn't offer. Not yet. The older I got, the clearer it became. I wasn't one of them. Not really. I shared their last name, I lived under their roof for years, but emotionally, I was always standing outside the door, waiting to be let in. At 23, I got promoted to junior manager at a fintech startup. I was the youngest on the team. My boss said, "You've got grit." I didn't even know what to say. I was so used to being invisible, I forgot what praise felt like. I told Marlene on the phone. I was smiling, proud of myself. Her response? "Oh, that's nice. Did you hear Rachel got invited to speak at some women's luncheon thing?" I forced a laugh. "That's great. I just thought you'd be happy for me too." Silence. Then, "Of course I'm happy. Just don't get too comfortable. Corporate jobs chew people up." I hung up and cried in the break room that day. It felt like I was back in high school, waving a report card no one wanted to see. Then came Rachel's second engagement. Same guy she divorced after a year, now magically changed. Mom was over the moon. They threw her a bridal shower at the house. I wasn't even asked to help plan. When I showed up with a gift bag and a smile, Rachel barely looked at me. "Oh wow, you came. I thought you were too busy for family stuff." "No," I said, swallowing my pride. "Wouldn't miss it." She opened the gift, personalized champagne flutes with their names etched in, and said, "Oh, thanks." Then set them aside like they were from some coworker she barely tolerated. Later that night, I helped clear the kitchen. Marlene handed me a garbage bag and said, "You were quiet today." I just shrugged. Didn't want to steal her spotlight. She gave me a look I'll never forget, equal parts pity and dismissal. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Some people aren't meant for the spotlight. That's okay too." The words hit harder than they should have. That night, I drove home shaking. I started pulling away more after that. Limiting phone calls. Politely declining invites. But somehow, that just made me the villain in their eyes. Luke texted once, "Why do you act like you're better than us now?" Better? I didn't think I was better. I just wanted to stop bleeding for people who never noticed when I was cut open. The real shift came when I bought my first rental property. I'd been saving quietly for years. Every freelance job, every tax return, every skipped night out went into that account. It was a duplex outside of Phoenix. I renovated the units myself over weekends with help from YouTube and a guy from work named Jared, who owned a truck. I told no one in my family. Not until the title was in my name. We had dinner one night, some forced family reunion Marlene insisted on. Over dry pot roast and forced laughter, Rachel mentioned her fiancé lost his job. Dad groaned. "So tired of this economy. Nothing's stable anymore." I cleared my throat. "Well, I actually just closed on a property last week." For faces turned toward me like I'd spoken Greek. George squinted. "A property?" "Yeah. I bought a duplex. Gonna rent out both units for a while. See where it goes." Marlene blinked slowly. "With what money?" "I've been saving for years." "Freelancing." "Side gigs." "Living frugally." Luke snorted. "What, like flipping houses now?" Rachel added. "Isn't that risky? You're not really business savvy." That one stung. Especially from her. George gave a tight smile. "Just be careful. That kind of thing doesn't always end well. You don't want to overextend yourself." No congratulations. No curiosity. Just warnings wrapped in condescension. After dinner, Marlene hugged me on the porch and said, "I just worry about you, Danielle. You always have these ideas." I didn't respond. I just nodded. I went home and worked harder. By 27, I owned 4 properties and had launched a virtual bookkeeping business on the side. My income outpaced my dad's salary from his decades-long career. But whenever I visited home, I was still Danielle with the drama. At one point, I tried to pay for a family meal. We were at a mid-range Italian place. The bill came, and I handed my card over. Marlene froze. What are you doing? I've got it. George shook his head. That's not your place. It's a gift, I said, smiling softly. Just let me treat you for once. He waved the waiter away. Don't embarrass me. Embarrass him? That was the last time I offered. They didn't want a successful version of me. They wanted the scapegoat. The one they could use to feel better about their own failures. I remember Jared once said, "Success makes some people proud of you. It makes others hate their reflection." And suddenly, everything made sense. I wish I could tell you there was one clear moment where everything snapped. But the truth is, it came slowly, like water creeping under a closed door. You don't see the flood until it's ruined everything. It started with a phone call. I was in a client meeting when I saw Luke's name flash across my screen. Missed call. Then another. Then a text. Mom fell. It's bad. You need to come. I didn't even ask for details. I just ran out. Canceled everything. Got on the next flight. By the time I got to Phoenix General, Marlene was already out of surgery. Hip fracture. Complications. Her blood pressure had dropped. Luke and George were sitting in the waiting room. Rachel wasn't even there yet. I stepped in, and George barely looked at me. He just said, "She's in room 218. If you want to see her." When I walked in, she looked so small. Pale. Nothing like the woman who once towered over me emotionally, always in control. She opened her eyes and whispered, "I didn't expect to see you." I sat down beside her. "I'm here now." There were so many things I wanted to say. So many old wounds I thought would scream open in that room. But all I could feel was the ache of a daughter who still, stupidly, wanted her mother to be proud. She winced and closed her eyes. "I hope this doesn't cause too much trouble for your work." I stared at her. Even now, lying in a hospital bed, her concern was how my priorities might be interrupted by her accident. I stayed for 3 days. Paid out of pocket for a nurse. Organized her medications. Had groceries delivered to the house. Rachel eventually showed up, but spent most of her time on calls. Luke was unreliable as ever. George seemed overwhelmed and tired. On the third night, as I was preparing dinner, I overheard George on the phone in the hallway. He was talking to someone, I think a cousin. I'll never forget his words. "She's just doing this to make herself look good. Danielle always has some angle. She's not doing this from the heart." My chest caved in like I'd been punched. All of it, my rushing here, my planning, my care, was just another transaction to him. I didn't even cry. I went to the guest room, shut the door, and sat in silence. That night, I booked a return flight. When I told Rachel I was leaving, she just rolled her eyes. "Nice. Figures you dip out early." I turned to her. "I stayed 3 days longer than you did." She shrugged. "You're the golden child now, right? Shouldn't you be setting an example?" Golden child? That was the moment it clicked. They didn't hate me for being selfish. They hated me because I stopped needing them. When I got back home, I buried myself in work. I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the things they said. The way George discounted me. The way Rachel mocked me. The way Luke never helped. 2 weeks later, I got a letter. It was from the county. An auction was scheduled for the Taylor family home. Our family home. They were months behind on property taxes. I reread the letter 5 times. Then I made some calls. And within days, I started the paperwork. I didn't tell them. I bid anonymously. Cash offer. The house was in my name within the month. I didn't do it out of cruelty. I did it because I knew they would lose it otherwise. I did it because, even after everything, I still couldn't stomach the thought of them out on the street. But I wasn't going to be quiet anymore. I scheduled a family meeting. I told George the first had something important to share and asked everyone to be there. They showed up reluctantly. Marlene with a cane. Rachel on her phone. Luke half asleep on the couch. I handed George a folder. He opened it. "Read the paperwork." He went pale. "You bought the house?" he whispered. Rachel snapped her head up. "Wait, what?" I looked each of them in the eye. "Yes." I bought it. I own it now. Marlene was the first to speak. You went behind our backs.
No.
I saved you. No one else did. Not Rachel. Not Luke. Not anyone. I didn't owe you this, but I did it anyway. George's voice trembled. So what now? I took a breath. You'll stay.
For now.
But starting next month, I expect rent. Fair rent. No discounts. No exceptions. And if that doesn't work for you, there are other options. The room went quiet. Luke muttered, "Wow. So you're really going to be that person?" I turned to him. I became that person because none of you believed I could. Marlene's eyes welled up. I never meant to make you feel like you weren't enough. I smiled, but there was no warmth. You didn't need to mean it. You just did it, over and over again. Rachel stood, furious. This is revenge.
No.
This is reality. You said I wasn't worth it. You built a world where I had to prove my value. And now you live in a house I own, by rules I set. And with that, I walked out. The air outside was cool. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small in that driveway. I felt seen. I thought buying the house would bring me closure. That once I laid down the law and reclaimed my power, I'd finally feel peace. But power doesn't silence the past. It just gives you the microphone to confront it. A week after that meeting, I started receiving texts. First from Rachel. "You're seriously going through with this?" Then Luke. "We're family. You don't charge family rent." And finally Marlene. "Please come by. I want to talk, just us." Against my better judgment, I went. She was sitting on the front porch, a blanket over her knees, cup of tea in her hands. I almost didn't recognize her. The woman who used to keep this house spotless, who judged anyone with chipped nail polish, now quiet, tired, small. "I heard from George," she said, motioning to the chair beside her. "He's angry." I sat, stiff. "I'm not surprised." She sipped her tea. "You always were so sensitive." There it was. That word again. I took a breath.
No.
I was observant. I noticed things no one else would admit. Like what? Like how Rachel could lie through her teeth and you'd still call her your bright star. Or how Luke could waste every opportunity and still be the baby of the family. But me? I got AB on a test, and you looked at me like I let you down. Marlene blinked. "That's not true." "It is. You didn't see it because you didn't want to see it. And when I started succeeding, you all treated me like I'd betrayed you by leaving the little box you built for me." She set her cup down, hands trembling. "We were scared for you, Danielle. You always had big ideas. We didn't want you to get hurt. No, you didn't want me to outgrow you. You couldn't control me, so you belittled me, mocked me, made me second-guess everything. That's not love. That's damage control." The words hung in the air. She looked down, then whispered, "You think I was a bad mother?" I swallowed. "I think you were a mother to Rachel. You were protective of Luke. But me? I was an inconvenience. A problem to manage." Her eyes welled. "I didn't know how to love you the way you needed. I wasn't hard to love. I just needed someone to believe in me." Silence again. Then she reached into her sweater pocket and handed me something. It was a photo. Crinkled. Faded. My childhood drawing. The one I gave her at Thanksgiving when I was 7. "I kept it," she said. "It's been in my drawer for years." I stared at it. The stick figures. The crooked house. The little red heart over the word Mom. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I asked. "Because I thought it didn't matter. I didn't think you'd care." I stood. I did care. That's the whole point. Later that week, George called me. He wasn't emotional. Just resigned. "I got your lease agreement," he said. "Looks fair." "It is." He paused. "I didn't think you had this in you. You never thought I had anything in me." "That's not true." "It is. And that's okay. Because I stopped needing your belief a long time ago." "Still," he said quietly, "you're my daughter." "I know. But now I'm also your landlord." The next confrontation came from Rachel.
Loud.
Predictable. She showed up at my office unannounced, stormed through the front desk like she owned the place. My assistant, Emily, tried to stop her, but I waved her in. "What are you doing?" Rachel spat, standing in the middle of my glass-walled office. "Charging our parents rent? Controlling their lives. I'm helping them keep a roof over their heads. Something none of you were willing to do." She laughed bitterly. "You think this makes you better than us?" "No," I said calmly. "I think this proves I was never less than you." She pointed a finger at me.
This isn't you.
"You're not this cold. You used to care about us." "I still do," I said. "But I care about myself more now." Finally. Her eyes narrowed. "This is just your revenge fantasy, isn't it?" "No," I said, standing. "This is justice. The kind of justice that happens when the overlooked kid grows up and builds an empire while everyone else is still blaming the world for their failures." She stormed out. I didn't chase her. That night, I sat in my apartment, lights off, staring at the skyline. And I let myself cry, not from sadness, but from release. Years of swallowing pain. Years of wondering if I was crazy, dramatic, ungrateful. But I wasn't any of those things. I was just surviving a family that didn't know how to see me. And now I finally saw myself. Not the failure. Not the mistake. The woman who rose. The one who rewrote the rules. And this time, the rules were mine. There's something no one tells you about standing up for yourself, about finally becoming the strong, assertive version of you that everyone used to mock or fear. You lose people. Not all at once. Not in dramatic breakups or slammed doors. But slowly. Quietly. The calls stop. The updates dry up. The invitations disappear. After I enforced the lease and handed my family the reality they'd never prepared for, it was like I became a stranger in their world. Rachel blocked me on social media. Luke sent me a text that just said, "You've changed. Congrats." George didn't speak to me for nearly 3 months, and when he did, it was only about logistics, rent payments, maintenance, repairs.
Cold. Businesslike.
Marlene tried a few times. She'd call, leave voicemails. "I miss having coffee with you on the porch. Saw your name in that business journal. Proud of you. Even if I don't always say it right." I never called back. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't trust myself not to fall back into old roles. The peace I'd found was fragile. And I had learned that love, when it comes with conditions and control, isn't really love at all. But that silence did hurt more than I expected. I'd built my life to be full. On paper, I had everything. A 6-figure income. 4 properties. A growing business. A team that respected me. Even new friends who saw me as the strong one. But at night in my apartment, when the emails stopped and the wine ran low, the quiet pressed down hard. I'd look at the framed photo of our family, one taken when I was maybe 12. Everyone smiling. Me too. But when I studied that little girl's face, I saw it. The tension in her hands, the slightly forced grin, the way she leaned toward Rachel like hoping to be accepted. I was grieving. Not just the family I lost, but the idea of the family I never truly had. I'd flash back to childhood dinners, trying to chime in but getting talked over. To birthdays where Rachel got a new dress and I got a clearance card. To times I stayed quiet so I wouldn't be called dramatic. It's strange to mourn something that technically still exists. They were alive. Still in that house. Still having dinners. Probably still talking about me, but without me. And yet, it was like they had died in my world. A symbolic death. There were triggers too. One time, I saw a mother and daughter shopping together, laughing at something, arms linked. I had to duck into a bathroom and cry in a stall for 15 minutes. I hated that I still longed for something so basic. I went back to therapy. A woman named Janice who didn't coddle me, didn't play devil's advocate. She said something that cracked me wide open. You didn't stop loving your family. You just stopped sacrificing your sanity to be near them. And she was right. Still, I questioned myself. Constantly. Was I too harsh? Should I have softened the blow? Could I have been more patient? But every time I tried to imagine a softer version of the story, it always came at my expense. I'd be shrinking again, apologizing for my ambition, swallowing their comments with a smile.
No.
That part of me died the moment I signed that deed. There were some unexpected reactions, though. My Aunt Denise, my mom's older sister, reached out. She sent me a handwritten letter. Said she always saw how they treated me. Said she regretted staying silent. Invited me to her home in Colorado anytime I wanted to visit. A friend from high school, Heather, sent me a message after seeing my business featured in a local magazine. I always knew you'd do something big. Your family never deserved you. Her words shocked me. I didn't think anyone had noticed. I even heard from Jared, the guy who helped me with my first duplex. He'd moved to Oregon, started a small construction business. He wrote, "You inspired me to bet on myself. Just thought you should know." Those messages mattered. They were like salve on old wounds. Not enough to erase the scars, but enough to stop the bleeding. Still, the ache lingered. Some mornings I'd wake up and instinctively want to call Marlene.
Share a recipe.
A dream I had. Ask how she was sleeping. But I didn't. Because I had learned, some calls cost too much. And I'd already paid the price of approval for too long. The most painful realization of all was this. I never had a mother. I had a woman who raised me, but only in body, not in spirit, not in love. And once I accepted that, I felt free. Not happy, not healed, but free. The house I once feared became a neutral space. A building I owned, not a graveyard I mourned in. I stopped driving by. Stopped checking if the porch light was on. I handed off the property management to a third-party company. Set everything to autopay. Removed myself from their orbit completely. And in that silence, I began to hear something else. My own voice. Unfiltered. Undiluted. Undeniably mine. Healing wasn't loud. It didn't come in some big revelation or joyful montage with soft piano music in the background. It came in pieces, quiet, almost forgettable moments that, over time, stitched me back together. Like the first morning I woke up and didn't check my phone for a message from my mother. Or the day I walked past a for sale sign and didn't flinch, realizing I wasn't scared of losing anything anymore, because I had already let go. I moved into a new apartment uptown. A corner unit with big windows and soft light. No memories lived there. Just plants, books, and the smell of rosemary candles. I didn't tell anyone. Not even my assistant. I just packed one weekend and left the old space behind. The first thing I did was hang that childhood drawing in my new kitchen. Not because I needed to remember the pain, but because that little girl deserved to see how far we'd come. Therapy continued. Janice helped me rewrite my inner script. I stopped saying things like, "I'm too much," or "maybe I misunderstood them." I replaced those thoughts with new ones. I deserved better. Their silence wasn't my fault. I am allowed to take up space. I joined a small business circle, mostly women, mostly under 35, all of us self-made. We met every other Saturday at a coffee shop, and for the first time, I had a circle that didn't ask me to dim my light. They celebrated every win, new clients, invoices paid, team growth. No backhanded compliments. No side eyes. I also found a friend in someone unexpected. Heather, the girl from high school who used to sit 2 rows behind me in English class. We bumped into each other again at a panel event for female entrepreneurs. She ran a boutique marketing agency and invited me to lunch after. Over pasta and iced tea, we caught up. She told me how her family had written her off when she came out as bisexual. How she spent years trying to earn love she never really had. We were different, but the pain was the same. And in that shared truth, we became each other's chosen family. Eventually, I stopped seeing my success as a weapon or a shield. It wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving to myself that I could build a life so whole, so vibrant, so mine, that their absence didn't feel like a wound anymore. I launched a mentorship program, free courses for first-gen college students trying to start side hustles. I called it Quiet Power. Because that's what I had cultivated all along. Quiet, steady strength that didn't need to scream to be seen. We held monthly Zoom calls, brought in guest speakers, even started a small grant fund. One day, a student messaged me. I was told I'd never make it out of my town. Now I'm opening my second Etsy shop. Thank you for believing in people like me. I cried reading that, not because I needed praise, but because it reminded me that everything I had survived now had purpose. I was no longer carrying pain for pain's sake. I was planting it like seeds, watching it bloom into something better. On my 31st birthday, I did something symbolic. I threw a dinner party for my people. No blood relatives, just the ones who showed up. Heather brought a lemon tart. Jared, who was back visiting from Oregon, brought wine and a toolkit. Janice even came, wearing hoop earrings and a leather jacket that made her look like a therapist from a movie. We laughed until our cheeks hurt, played 90s R&B, toasted to hard beginnings and soft landings. At one point, I looked around the room and thought, this is family. Not the people who raised me,
but the ones who saw me.
No one asked me to shrink. No one weaponized my ambition. No one treated my kindness like currency. That night, after everyone left, I stood in my kitchen, barefoot, glass of wine in hand, and whispered to the air. We made it. Not to anyone in particular, just to the girl in the drawing, to the woman I became, to every version of me who never gave up, even when it would have been easier to vanish. If you're still watching this, thank you. Not just for your time, but for witnessing my story. For sitting with me through the ache, the anger, the silence, and the healing. Because if you've ever felt overlooked, if you've ever been the scapegoat, the black sheep, the one no one expected to succeed, then you already know what I'm about to say is more than just words. It's a truth you carry, too. You are not hard to love. You were just born into a place that didn't know how to hold all of your light. Family is not the people who share your blood. It's the ones who don't flinch when you speak your truth, who celebrate your wins without shrinking, who show up, especially when it's inconvenient. I spent years trying to earn the love of people who were more comfortable when I stayed small. And when I finally outgrew the version of me they could control, they called it betrayal. But you know what? Outgrowing your past isn't betrayal. It's survival. It's rebirth. And if you're in that space right now, if you're rebuilding, starting over, choosing yourself for the first time, I want you to know, you are not alone.
Drop a comment.
Share your story. Let someone else see that they're not the only one learning how to breathe again after a lifetime of holding it in. Because we are out here. The quiet ones. The misunderstood ones. The ones who were told they were too sensitive, too ambitious, too different. And guess what? That difference? It's your magic. So speak up. Claim your space. Set your boundaries without apology. And if no one's told you this lately, I'm proud of you. Not because you're perfect, but because you chose truth over comfort. Because you didn't fold. Because you turned pain into power. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Not for views, but for connection. Because maybe, just maybe, your voice is the one someone else is waiting to hear, so they can find their own. Let's build something real. Together. In truth. In strength. And in the light. See you in the comments. Red heart.